Auschwitz, also known as Auschwitz Birkenau, opened in 1940 and was the largest of the Nazi concentration and death camps. Located in southern Poland, Auschwitz initially served as a detention center for political prisoners. However, it evolved into a network of camps where Jewish people and other perceived enemies of the Nazi state were exterminated. Often, gas chambers were used as slave labor. During World War II, more than 1 million people, by some accounts, lost their lives at Auschwitz. In January 1945, with the Soviet army approaching, Nazi officials ordered the camp abandoned and sent an estimated 60,000 prisoners on a forced march to other locations.
At its peak of operation, Auschwitz consisted of several divisions. The original camp, known as Auschwitz I, housed between 15 and 20,000 political prisoners. Those entering its main gate were greeted with an infamous and ironic inscription, Arbeit macht frei, or work makes you free. From 1942 to 1944, trains transported Jews from all over Europe to Auschwitz. Over 1.3 million people were sent to Auschwitz, and 1.1 million of them lost their lives. Auschwitz ran from May 1940 to January 1945. Many of the prisoners who were not killed in the gas chambers died of starvation, forced labor, execution, and medical experiments. The prisoners had a daily routine at the camp that consisted of many duties. The daily schedule would consist of waking up, cleaning up their sleeping area, roll call where they were all separated into sections and had numbers tattooed on their forearm to represent their section and prisoner number. They would then wait in line for a near-nothing amount of food every day. They would then report to their duties in the field or in the buildings of the camp. They were given a thin jumpsuit that they would wear year-round, so many of them died of frostbite in the winter. Some of the experiments that were conducted were freezing experiments and immunization testings. They would leave the prisoners in freezing cold conditions until they died. They would record their temperature and time of death. They used these experiments to treat hypothermia. There are about 7,000 guards at the camp, and at least 12% of them were convicted of war crimes. Out of the 1.3 million prisoners at Auschwitz, only 802 attempted to escape, and only 144 successfully made it out. The surviving prisoners were able to leave on January 27, 1945. This was a day to be remembered, as the horrors of the Nazi government would come to an end. As 1944 came to a close and the defeat of Nazi Germany by the Allied forces seemed certain, the Auschwitz commandants began destroying evidence of the horror that had taken place there. Buildings were torn down, blown up, or set on fire, and records were destroyed. In January 1945, as the Soviet army entered Krakow, the Germans ordered that Auschwitz be abandoned. Before the end of the month, in what came to be known as the Auschwitz Death Marches, an estimated 60,000 detainees, accompanied by Nazi guards, departed the camp and were forced to march to the Polish towns of Gliwice or Łazież, some 30 miles away. Countless prisoners died during this process. Those who made it to the sites were sent on trains to concentration camps in Germany. When the Soviet army entered Auschwitz on January 27th, they found approximately 7,600 sick detainees who had been left behind. The liberators also discovered mounds of corpses, hundreds of thousands of pieces of clothing, and pairs of shoes, and 7 tons of human hair that had been shaved from the detainees before their liquidation. According to some estimates, between 1.1 million to 1.5 million people, the vast majority of them Jews, died at Auschwitz during its years of operation. An estimated 70,000 to 80,000 Poles perished at the camp, along with 19,000 to 20,000 Romas and smaller numbers of Soviet prisoners of war and other individuals.